Are you ready?
Are you ready, folks? See, you can't take over the ukulele. I'm starting to get a little bit upset about that. It's out of tune. Now I'm upset.
I wonder if it's out of tune like we are something. No, we're never out of tune. We're in tune. We are like a finely greased, oiled machine.
Don't touch my ukulele
Don't touch
again,
the ukulele.
please.
Hello, folks.
Hi. Yeah, so this is Healthy Gut Girl, and this is Stuff Your Doctor Should Know. And this is Mark Lobato.
Hello.
And we are having a very serious podcast today, a very serious episode with a returning guest, Daniel DeBaun. I think I'm saying his name right. He wrote the book with his son, I believe, Radiation Nation, and he is unbelievably fascinating. And I'm having him back because we were talking a few times ago and you said, let's have Daniel back. And because you weren't with me when I interviewed him the first time, and you wanted to know about
5G wireless.
Yeah, the 5G technology that everybody's up in arms about, but that apparently AT&T is going to have rolled out all across America by 2020.
Oh, man. Okay.
So I don't know. We'll be able to get on Snapchat quicker than we can now. So that's a good thing.
Great. And now we're also doing a different format of the show, right, Kat? Yes.
Yeah. Well, we don't have to say that. We can just do it.
Yes, just do it. Well, I wanted to just let our folks know who listen to us that we're just going to change the format around a little bit.
Well, anyway, we just want to thank our sponsors. First of all, we want to just tell everybody about Just Thrive. If you have not listened to the podcast called The Bugs in You, which is one of our episodes about 3 back, with Kiran Krishnan, it's remaining one of our favorites. Mm-hmm. He's just talking about spore-based probiotics and why they're so much more effective than regular probiotics that you can buy, even the very expensive fancy ones from your doctor that don't make it past the gastric system. They might help in other ways, but they don't make it into the large intestine where they're needed to re-inoculate the gut, and that is the most important. That's why we're taking them. Just Thrive is a Megaspore, or they also make Megaspore. The same doctor makes Megaspore, or scientist, I should say. And they're spore-based, so they're like in a little tiny shell, and they make it past the gastric system into the large intestine, where they then kind of crack open, and there they proliferate and help re-inoculate the large intestine with the bacteria needed to help bring balance to all of your ailments, basically. So if you go to healthygutgirl.com and click on the shop page, you can scroll down and find the Just Thrive logo there and see what they're offering you today. And then we also have S.A. Wilson's, who is our coffee enema provider. We love them so much. That coffee that is a raw coffee. It's not a coffee you're going to drink. It's like a yellowish ground powder, and it's got more of the palmitic acid and caffeine needed to have an effective coffee enema. It will blow your mind for those of you who already do them and haven't ever tried using this particular coffee. Just go down to the same healthygutgirl.com and scroll down, or click on the shop page and scroll down to find the S.A. Wilson's banner there and see what they're offering today. And then, of course, your Premier Research Labs account. The one thing I am very adamant about and very serious about is your quality of supplementation. It is just as bad for you to go out and purchase Trader Joe multivitamins and Costco family size, daily ones or whatever you want to call them, because they are filled with excipients. They're filled with toxic tagalongs, with preservatives, with things that are just as bad for you as not taking a supplement at all. It's very important that you get high quality, even if you're getting supplements like Standard Process and supplements like Pure Encapsulations. Even those companies who I sometimes use, they even use fillers and stabilizers like magnesium stearate, which is a vegetable-based oil that helps lubricate the machines to put the capsule into capsule form. And it's fine if you're just taking it for a month, but if you're taking magnesium glycinate your whole life, or you're taking a desiccated animal product from Standard Process for your whole life, this stuff accumulates in the body. It actually causes toxic burden on the liver, it's not good for you. It's not good, especially if you're taking these things ongoing. So I always recommend trying to get the purest, most high quality forms of supplements, and Premier Research Labs is one of the best. So get your free, and because they're nutraceuticals, you have to get them through a practitioner unless you're a listener of Stuff Your Doctor Should Know. So healthygutgirl.com. Click on the shop page, scroll down, and sign up for your free account. No obligation to purchase anything. Just check them out. See if there's something you like. See what their discounts are for today. So we talked about poor Kate Spade and her suicide, and how there was a post. Move Colonics, who's amazing. I love them. They posted on Instagram about the 5G wireless technology tower that was on the top of her building, and how these things could potentially be contributing to hormone imbalance, to depression, to altering your state of mind, to apathy, things like that. And so we are desperate to have Daniel back today. He was so gracious to come. And so let's hear what he has to say about this amazing and scary stuff.
Hello, this is Dan DeBaun. How are you doing today? Yes,
There
can you
he
hear me
is.
now?
Now I can't hear us.
That's okay.
Okay, that's
Hear him.
fine. As
Yeah.
long as I can hear you, that's the most important.
Right.
So, yeah, we took a break for a little bit because both of us, he was moving and then I was moving. And so we had to relocate the studio and all kinds of stuff. But in the process of moving, I shut off my Wi-Fi, and you would have thought I would have learned my lesson from you the first time, like you said. And we shut the Wi-Fi off, and I just didn't think, you know what it was? I didn't think I was that sensitive to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I shut the Wi-Fi off because we were moving. So I literally had it turned off. And then we both, my husband and I, both slept like babies for 3 days before. Yeah. It was crazy. And then during that time, I started to bring it up at the dog park with all my friends and talking to them about, some people that have insomnia. And one by one, they all started to experiment with turning off their Wi-Fi, and had all of them across the board had amazing results. And
I'm stunned at that. That's realistic analysis, which you can't dispute.
yeah. And one guy says, now it's just my everyday habit. So when we moved into this location, I decided to do the same thing, where we set up our Wi-Fi, and it has a switch on the back of it, and I only turn it on when I need it now. Before, we were going to do, all right, let's just do it at night, and in the morning we'll turn it back on. Now I'm only using it when I either have Netflix on, or I feel like I need to, when I'm writing or working, or doing podcasting.
Yep.
So in getting to how you came up again, so at the park, I'm talking about your book and talking about you and my laptop protector and all this stuff. And somebody posted on Instagram a story about Kate Spade, who was the handbag designer who committed suicide a week before Anthony Bourdain did. Mm-hmm. And they posted that she, I guess, had some complaints in the past or something about the fact that there was a 5G tower on top of her building in New York. Mm-hmm. And she, I don't know if the story was that she had complained about it in the past or what it was, but that fact that it was contributing to depression and hormone imbalance and mental health problems. And then I said, wait a minute, what's the difference between, so let's begin this by asking you, what is the difference between the two networks that I have on my computer when I open up my laptop and I see that I have two networks given to me by Time Warner? One says 2G and one says 5G. What is the difference between that 5G and this 5G technology that everybody is up in arms about?
Well, I don't know how much you recall from the last time we spoke, but up to 4G. No, let me go back a little bit, because it will help you understand what the long-term impact is. With 1G, it was an analog signal, and that's a constant load to the body. And at 30 years ago, when that was sort of available, there wasn't seemed to be health problems related to those emissions. And then between 2 and 4G, the signal, the data was digital. Okay. So now you had a digital on off to the cell. Think of it like this. If I take a 10,000 pound load on a piece of steel against a piece of concrete, it won't break the concrete. But if I take that same load and lift it up and down, the concrete breaks. So it is a jackhammer-like function that was occurring when they converted from analog to digital. And a lot of what you and I talked about was what's been going on in the past. Then all of a sudden, 5G comes along. What's 5G? Well, it's 40 times, 45 times faster. You have a 2 gigahertz. Remember, we talked about microwaves and it's your microwave oven actually has an RF signal at around 2 gigahertz. Mm-hmm. It's actually 2.4 gigahertz. So your cell phone's about 2 gigahertz. Take that 2 gigahertz, and now it can go up to 90 gigahertz. So it's double. So now you have extremely fast signal. And by the way, I don't know if we talked about this, but when you have, when you go to get an X-ray, that's called ionized radiation. Mm-hmm. RF is called non-ionized. What that means is, if you're in an X-ray too long, the electron gets pounded out of its atmosphere or its rotation, and it's charged positively. That's why everyone gets cancer if they're exposed too long for an X-ray. Okay. Well, you go from 2 gigahertz to 90 gigahertz. Well, 90 gigahertz is 1/3 of an ionized signal. It's 300 gigahertz is where it becomes ionized. So the load itself is much, much faster. And as you approach the very, very fast signal, it becomes likely more concern because the load is so much more. Now, it's MIMO, multiple in, multiple out. That means you don't have just one signal that's digital on off. You have more than one. So you look at all this data and you say, oh my goodness, if the past has been bad, what should we expect in the future? Mm-hmm. And when we last spoke, it turns out that there was a lot of study work, research work, up to 4G, and we can talk about the symphony of all the issues related to that, including the things that you were experiencing. Mm-hmm. 5G, not one study has been done long term, none. So the only thing you can do is say, I don't know what the impact is. However, if you look at the practical things that have happened in the marketplace and you extrapolate into the future, it's not so good. Mm. So we're a large experiment on 5G, in other words.
So, okay. So what about, so I heard that AT&T will be rolling out this 5G technology throughout the US by 2020. I don't understand how that's different from the 5G that's already on my laptop, my network in my house.
Yours is considered a trial. So they're actually providing service and they're allowed to do that as a trial. It becomes generally available to everyone in 2020.
Oh.
So let me tell you a story. I actually have relationships with the medical community. And there's a fellow by the name of Dr. Court out of Portland. A neurologist, and he's a very, very electrically hypersensitive. He has a friend who's also my friend, who's a biochemist, and she's not sensitive at all. We were talking one weekend when she went to her new place, and she said, while we were speaking, oh my God, my head is hurting. And Dr. Court couldn't stay in the room. So I said to her, she's asking me, what's going on? I said, go look and see what your router says. And sure enough, it was a 5G router. Here's a lady that never was influenced by the signal. And she was within 2 hours feeling debilitated as a result of it. And Dr. Court couldn't stand her instantly. So if that's a premonition of what's going to happen, it's not good.
Wow. So then, okay. they said that they were doing trials in, I think, Minneapolis and some other places, I forget, but I didn't realize that they were already trialing it here in Los Angeles.
11 hours ago.
Oh, Los Angeles has been going on for a while, actually. That's actually when Jonette, who is the biochemist friend of mine, she was going along and seeing all these towers, all these new towers, and she was calling me, telling me, "Hey, what's going on?" I said, "They're doing trials out in your location." And what they're doing, by the way, is the trials are not in your cell phone. The trials are embedded in the router. So it's where all the local stuff within your house is being consolidated. And then rather than a cable, they're using a wireless connection.
Wow.
No, so let me tell you why they do that. The cable plant is really, really expensive to operate. And up to this point, if you wanted really good video service, you had a problem with the wireline network. All of a sudden, 5G comes along, and what they refer to as the Internet of Things. You're allowed to connect to everything at very, very fast speeds now. And so you can do anything you want, anywhere you want. It turns out, though, wireless is much less expensive to maintain than the cable plant. So the motivation, I wonder, is it not just, it may be for the customer value, but it's certainly also true, it's to reduce costs for service providers.
Now, why would they say that 5G is a lot more, is not as reliable? Like the guy who set up my Wi-Fi said, it's not as reliable, but it's faster, and the 2G is more reliable, but it's slower. Why is it less reliable, I guess?
Okay, so when you pick up your cell phone and you make a phone call, that signal can go up to 5 miles. It's like goes really far because it's a relatively broad signal. With 5G, it can go 2 blocks. That's it.
Oh.
So there's going to be cell towers every several blocks to provide that service. And what you're probably experiencing is insufficient towers to cover the services that they're providing.
Yeah, because they were saying that what would have to happen is there would have to be, like you said, an antenna or tower every few houses.
Yeah, it's terrible. Wow. I don't know if you remember, Kitty, remember I talked about bees in the room? Do you recall that?
I think so. It sounds familiar. Keep going.
Yeah, bees in the room are how many transmitters are in the room.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
And you want to eliminate as many as you can. And like, for example, when you turn off your Wi-Fi, that's pretty important. That's a transmitting signal that's constantly hitting your body. So you want to turn them off. Well, guess what? Outside of your windows, you're going to have 2, maybe even 3 towers
right
into your house.
Well,
yeah, and that's how they're going to be able to provide that service, by only doing it so densely.
Well, Mark and I were talking about how, when I just moved here, I went on to my laptop to try to connect to my particular network. And of course, I live in a much more congested little complex here. And 15 other Wi-Fis came up, and they're not shutting their Wi-Fis off at night. And you just said the signal, no, you said the cell phone signal goes 2 blocks. But I'm not protected from these other Wi-Fis, right?
Actually, what turns out that in our past chats, I think we chatted about distance. When you have an exposure of a 2 gigahertz signal coming out of 2.4 or 5 gigahertz is from a Wi-Fi coming out, generally speaking, after about 10 feet, maybe 15 feet, it doesn't mean anything. So your neighbor's stuff, you see it, but it's not endangering your body at all. It's only when it's closer. That is not true of 5G because the strength of the signals is so much more.
Oh, boy. And everybody's going to have that soon. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually, it's funny you say that. I was asked at a conference, they were explaining to me that a cell tower went right outside their window and was that a problem? And I wasn't kidding when I said move, because that constant load to your bedroom over 24 hours a day will likely you'll incur health issues as a result of that exposure.
So some of these cell phone towers look like just a couple of those. I don't know what those large white plasticky looking cylinder things.
Yep.
Some of them just have a few of those. Some of them are no joke. Like they've got a lot. And obviously those are probably stronger or trying to reach a bigger area. Is that right?
Well, actually what it is companies go in and they create a property that others can rent. So every one of those things you see represents a different carrier. So maybe in your area, like in LA, for example, there's so many service providers, they're all sitting on one tower. Whereas in rural areas, you may only have one or two that feel like going after that business. So it depends. The number of them, it really sort of depends on the congestion in the area.
And then as far as the cell phone towers go, how close is too close? And when are you sort of safe to, because we have one in our last place that was not even a quarter of a block away from us. Now that same one, because we just moved a few blocks away, that same one is about, a quarter of a mile away from us. So how far is too far, or how close is too close?
Yeah, that's always a tough question. There was a recent study out actually it was in Germany, where they looked at populations that were around towers, and they tried to compare health symptoms of the population within a half mile and the population outside a half a mile. And they found more incidence of health issues within the half a mile radius. And so, I always suggest you want to be at least 200 feet away. But the more you are, the better off you are.
Right. Well, that's going to, as soon as these trials, I guess, are they going to actually have physical antennas or towers every few blocks or every other house or whatever that we're going to visibly see? Or are they already embedded in our modems, like you were saying about the 5G?
Actually, you won't even notice it. What they're doing, the service companies, they're going through the rights of way. That is, there are in front of your block. If you have a power line, that's a right of way. That is, if your land is touching where that telephone pole is, it's a right of way. It's not your property necessarily. You mow it, but it's common ground for the right of way for the service providers.
Okay.
Yeah, for the utilities. So because the 5G service providers were anticipating the need for many approvals for local positioning of those towers. So what they did is they got agreement at the federal government level that doesn't require having local jurisdiction approval for those towers. So those towers were going to go in whether they wanted to or not, and they don't even have to tell anyone.
Wow.
The other thing is that those towers are not the huge antenna towers. They're really much smaller. So you won't even recognize them. You won't even see them. The ones on the road that you may have seen in LA highways, those are broader, maybe a different function, but generally the ones in the residential areas, you won't even know they're there.
Yeah, the ones they try to disguise as like palm trees and
right,
forest.
Exactly. Yeah. Cactus in the middle of palm trees, right?
Yeah.
So Dan, you have a lot of data that supports all of this, right? So, and I'm sure this information is well known within the industries that are creating this. So it sounds to me that these towers going up, since they don't have any warning labels on them, which they probably should, that it sounds to me like big business is sort of pushing these towers into effect without while hiding the dangers of them. It's what it sounds like to me, because we already have the data with high tension wires. We know frequencies affect us to such a degree that
you're not allowed to build houses under them.
you're not allowed to build. Well, people, right? We've had this data for decades. So now you have cell phone towers coming up. Scientists know that these frequencies, at these ranges, are going to be harmful to the humans or any organic, I guess, living species. So again, I'm asking you. I guess I'm just trying to clarify. It just sounds like this is known. It's known information, but it's allowed to happen because probably you can't. I guess the businesses won't get sued because you can't. I guess directly correlate your illness with these cell phone towers because it could be so many different things.
Yeah, you hit on so many subject matter. Let me try to help think it.
Unpack it.
There's been a federal government national toxicity study, epidemiology study, that proved that there was cancer-causing elements with exposure to the frontal lobe and the heart. So there's a big debate about it, of course, but that was the facts. They spent $25 million and they figured that out. That was recently correlated to an epidemiology study in Europe out of Italy, and it was even broader than what they did in the US. And they substantiated those findings. So to the point you just made, it's a debate maybe, but if it was me and my kids, it's not a debate. I got to worry about it. And so I'll go back to the federal government's position on the standard. When they developed the standard, they were worried only about one thing, the thermal impact. What does that mean? Well, you put a piece of meat in an oven, what happens? It heats up. Why? Because the water in between the cells gets hot and it oscillates the cells and you have, voila, meat that's cooked you can eat. So it's
the microwaves work the same, right? I mean, you're heating up the water molecule.
It's literally, when you use a cell phone to your head directly, the standard prevents it from going any more than 2 degrees. That's what the standard says. We don't want you to cook, so we'll let it go up to 2
So
degrees.
you're simmering your hypothalamus.
Yeah, we're going to simmer you. We're not going to cook you from raw to well done.
So it's allowable temperature range within your brain. That's
right.
Right.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure you guys are more familiar with the worst problem is the biological impact. When you talk about studies that look at ADHD and all the neurological potential impacts, leukemia, so many illnesses have been associated with these exposures. None of them are thermal. So you now question what's going on in the federal government. Well, when the FCC was reviewing the 5G for replacement, many European countries have chosen to wait. They think there may be too much potential danger to the user. So they've put that stuff on hold.
You know, one of the reasons why I'd probably say why the European countries put that stuff on hold, and is because they pay for the health care of their citizens.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah,
I've heard. Kat's looking at me no, but there was. I wanted to just preface this. There's chemicals that are allowed here.
Yes.
Are allowed on our market. In Europe, they're not. I remember listening to this on NPR.
Oh, yeah.
Because they even said, we're paying for the health care. We know this causes problems. Why would we want to allow this into our country when we know we're going to be paying for this?
Well, the only reason I rolled my eyes, Mark, is because they're not paying for it. We're paying for it.
Exactly.
There's no such thing as free medicine. Everybody's paying for it.
Yeah, you're saying that, but and I'm not pushing any products that I happen to sell. In the industry. But when I started selling defensive products to protect yourself, everything I sold was to Europe. They're more aware of it than the U.S. market. It's simple as that. They're more aware of their environment, it appears to me, and multiple chemical sensitivity, as you were just talking about, limits the chemicals and the agents within those states and countries because they don't want to risk the population that's aware of the potentials. In the US, the FCC chairman at the time that approved this, as I was saying before, he said it's more important that we leapfrog everyone in the world and we're not worried about the dangers. We want to make sure we're leading in technology. Literally, that's what he said.
Wow.
And I got to tell you, reviewing the FCC when they were doing the review of the standards, there were many of us who actually were attempting to bring logic to the federal government's decision making on this subject, and none of it was listened to at all. And there were some really qualified people. You know, it's funny. You were asking me before about I was telling you the symptoms you get. One of the things that bothered me, you say you feel it now, Kitty. Mm-hmm. Women, more than 20% of the women population in the country, in the world, are electrically hypersensitive, some worse than others. It gets worse as you get older, right? So this kind of stuff has really bothered me a long time. That's why Jeanette and Dr. Court I work with, because we're trying to understand the problem. Well, one of the things Dr. Ali Johansson out of Sweden recently found was that it's not just the cell that's being screwed up. It's actually, it's suppressing your immune system. Mm. So all of a sudden you're being suppressed and you're getting worse and you're getting headaches and getting worse. It's because by definition, that's what it's doing to your body from these exposures.
I mean, when you said, about the meat and the water between the cells and all of that, it's like it's like we're being slowly cooked.
Yes.
And that's a crazy way to think about it. It's
a metaphor of the frog and the boiling water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I describe it that way because it is literally 2.6 gigahertz, a microwave. And the cell phone you're using is about 2 gigahertz. The power levels are different, but in other words, it's much less magnitude, but that doesn't make it any less dangerous. And let me tell you why. Recently, studies found that if you're concussed, you hit your head playing football, there's a blood-brain barrier that actually protects the skull. Mm-hmm. Of the body. And under those circumstances, with exposure from an RF signal, 0.1 watts per kilogram, that doesn't mean much to you, but that's an extremely small amount of power level. Mm-hmm. Your cell phone's 1.6, by the way. This is 1.1, which is 15 times less, will impact the cell and damage the cell DNA. So even the littlest of exposure can be potentially dangerous under the right circumstances.
So make the connection there between someone that's been concussed. I missed that connection.
Yes. By the way, a lot of us are, and we don't even know it.
Is there data supporting that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's no question about it. In fact, Dr. Court, because he's a neurologist, was recognizing electric hypersensitive association with concussed. He never put it together until we read my book. And that's why he started coming to me, working with us, because it was clear and evident research that said there could be an impact. There could be an association with exposures. And he wasn't aware of that. Of course, now he is. And he says the same thing I do. Doctor, it hurts me when I have a cell phone to my head. Well, take it away from your head.
Right. Wow. So, okay, how about, I had some people out knowing that I was going to have you back, and I can't remember if we had addressed this before, but the difference between the radiation that we receive when we fly in airplanes and go through the
scanner
at the airport.
X-ray scanner. The terahertz scanner.
Yeah, it's funny.
I opt out of that every time.
Do you?
All the time.
And you should, and I'll tell you why. On the aircraft, the military approached me about the problem of exposures within an aircraft because there are so many sources of RF signal. So it's not like it's a surprise. And now with Wi-Fi introduced, it's even more exposure. So unfortunately, there's not much you can do about it. Most of the time, you're probably far enough away where it's likely you won't be bothered, or if it is, it's not significant. So that's that part of the question. What happens in an aircraft? The other part of the question was, what was the other part?
Like the scanners at the airport.
Yeah, the scanners. They used X-ray for years and years and years that were calibrated. In other words, the signal could go up or down because it wouldn't maintain a constant signal. So by definition, that's the ionized signal hitting the cell, knocking the electron out of its orbit that we spoke about.
So the person working the machine was in more
right
danger than...
Yeah.
Yeah.
We knew that. But remember, X-ray exposure is cumulative. So if you were going to go on the aircraft and you traveled every week, do not go through that. Well, most of those are gone. Most of them now are RF. It's literally the stuff we're talking about. And the question is that dangerous? And I don't know if you've listened to the coaching in the past I've given. It's time and duration, right? So if you're not exposed too long, you're probably okay. It's not going to bother you too much. Mm-hmm. So they're relatively safe.
So then you are accumulating radiation when you fly, like these pilots that fly every day of their lives practically. It's like not a good thing for them. They're accumulating radiation from that altitude, being at that altitude.
Well, I don't know. Recent studies suggest that the stewardess on the aircraft has high incidence of cancer than any other population. Yeah. Is there a correlation between the RF or no air? I'm not sure what it is, but it's certainly true that there's clear evidence in research that suggests it's a problem.
And then, so then the other thing was the scanners, but then there was, we talked about this last time, which was, so my mentor used to say, anything with a battery or that plugs into a wall emits an electromagnetic frequency. And you have to limit, like the bees in the room, like you said, limit your exposure to all kinds of things, not just the Wi-Fi or whatever, but just try to reduce your exposure to, like a Fitbit on your wrist and the iWatch and the all of that stuff. So yeah, you agree with that?
Oh, no question about that. Remember I mentioned 0.1 watts per kilogram?
Uh-huh.
That's the Bluetooth coming out of those bands.
Mark just took off his iWatch.
That's 0.3 watts per kilogram. I had a yoga instructor. She comes and she shows me her brand new thing she got from Christmas. And I said to her, what the hell is wrong with you? I'm in this space. Don't put that near your body. And she was a young girl. Young married girl. And so I told her, those things, even though you don't think it's dangerous, if they're transmitting constantly to the cell phone, then it's a problem. If it's not transmitting, you're probably safe. So it really depends on the device. But Kitty, the question you had a minute ago, anytime there's current flow, anytime anything that's using power is emitting electromagnetic radiation, period. Right? Mm-hmm. So you have your wall and there's a wire running inside and you have a light at the end of plugged into the wall. Is there exposure? Absolutely. So if you have your head right against the wall where that wire is, that's not a good thing. If it's a couple of feet away, 3-4 feet away, you're fine. So that exposure is called, there's ELF, electromagnetic low frequency emissions.
Okay.
And that's what typically happens with anything that has AC. Your refrigerator, anything that runs a motor anything that runs your computer is emitting extremely low frequency stuff. So yes, there's anything that has a device that processes power will always emit it, and you should eliminate them where you can, or just move them away. Remember, when it's touching your body, it's 100% endangering you. If you're 1 foot away, 80% of that danger is gone. 4 foot away, 98. So move it away a little bit, and you're fine.
Wow. So what about the light on your computer? So, you know, Dave Asprey, of course, as you know, you were on his show. He talks a lot about the light emitted from digital devices and things like that. I'm new to that part of it all. Can you tell me as if I were new to it all?
I will. Any light you see is electromagnetic radiation. It's in the spectrum between RF, microwaves, and X-rays. It's in the between that stuff. So is that dangerous? Well, I often like to describe UV rays. You know, you go out in the sun and they tell you put something on your skin so the sun doesn't get to you. It's the UV component of that sun that you're worried about, A and B component. So that's what becomes dangerous. Well, it turns out that the next strongest light is blue. It's blue light. So slightly less than the ultraviolet is the blue light. What can that do to you? Well, it can screw around with your retina. Macular degeneration, which is a failure of the eye over time, is exacerbated by that exposure. So there's like these direct links to the impact to the retina, and there's a whole slew of things that go with it. In fact, you were talking about sleeping before. The balance, the body balance, the melatonin machine that creates melatonin, all that stuff is in the same area of the brain that is connected with the eye. So there's all these other things that are now becoming more apparent. You know, I used to walk straight when I was young. Now I waddle around. That's because potentially that the blue light component of that screen is impacting my retina. And so is it a problem? Not if you're on a cell phone, not if you're looking at a cell phone for 5 minutes or a terminal for a couple of minutes. But if you're on for hours, there's no doubt it can impact it.
Wow.
Another thing that's important to know, what is it? The rhythm, the body rhythm.
Circadian rhythm.
Yeah, the circadian rhythm. It screws up the circadian rhythm. And that in and of itself dysfunctions the body. And so that's even maybe sometimes worse than some of the other symptoms.
So now I have a question for you. What do you do? What's your protocol? I'd like to know everything you do in your life that remediates, alleviates, and just diminishes the amount of exposure. What are you doing with
I eliminate the bees in the room. On a cell phone, for example, there's a cell tower connection, there's a Bluetooth connection, and there's a Wi-Fi connection. I turn them off. I don't use that stuff. I only have one transmitter. And when I use it, I actually shield that so it doesn't touch my body. So I'm reducing the number of bees in the room by cutting off those sources. I have a timer on my router. It turns off. I go to bed early and get up early, so it's on that time window. A very simple thing to do. And that router is in the farthest part of the house, and I still get access, and I'm fine. So I reduce that exposure by minimize that exposure by putting it as far away as I can within the home. When I use a device on my lap, I shield it. I will not use a device anywhere near my body without shielding. And that's a preference others can make. but I don't. And when I use a screen, I have blue light screens that I use. I will not look at a screen. And it's not like I think I'm going to lose my eyesight tomorrow. It's more precautionary. In fact, one of the things I've always believed, and I have Jonette, biochemist, working with us on, I think it's genetic to some extent. Why are women more susceptible to men? Why are a certain group of women more susceptible to men? We don't know those answers, right? Mm-hmm. But until we figure that out, you probably want to think about trying to stay safe.
I wonder, what about how these frequencies are transmitted through water? Or are they?
They're not.
Okay. I thought maybe that could be part of it, because women have a higher fat percentage and higher water content.
But by the way, we talked about extremely low frequency stuff. The Earth generates somewhere around 10 to 15 hertz DC constantly. Very, very low level.
The Hartmann and Schumann waves. I think that's what they're called.
Yeah, and it turns out that's been around forever, right? Mm-hmm. But you know what? That's probably the only source of natural emission. All the others are man-made.
So are you familiar with the work of Wilhelm Reich?
Who? Oh,
Wilhelm Reich, the organ?
Yeah, like the Reich machine. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
Reich machine.
No, not the Reich. He had the Cloudbuster, but also they claim you have this technology where they can reduce the amount of EMFs.
Oh, well, so I brought this up in the last podcast.
Yeah, I remember that.
And so that actually, has there been any further research on any of these devices that claim to remediate the incoming or outgoing radiation from your phone or your devices by putting these little devices on your computer or your phone?
There has been no advances in terms of research or science adding something to establish that. Okay. And I think I remember telling you the last time we spoke about this, if you can't find independent study of scientific breadth, then I wouldn't buy it. A lot of terms are used in this industry. I have no idea what they're talking about. They're not talking about physics that I know. They're not talking about electrical engineering that I know. Mm-hmm. I do not know what they're talking about. When you say I've neutralized the signal, and that's a term I don't think most use, but if I've neutralized its impact on my body, well, if that's true, how are you talking to the cell tower? It doesn't make any sense. And I hate indirect study. In other words, I didn't have a cell phone near my muscle, and then when I put it, my muscle was different. That has nothing to do with long-term impacts of the cell.
Right.
And there may be those kinds of claims made, but again, you really should look at the research that the manufacturer is claiming and look for independent study. And it's not indirect. You want direct scientific evidence. Mm-hmm. And that's all I suggest.
Yeah, because when they make claims like it remediates the EMFs, or it turns the bad waves into good waves, or stuff like that. You hear that a lot. It turns the bad waves into good waves. Right.
There's no such thing. Now, like for example, if you have a huge chunk of carbon, that will attract and neutralize an emission in bulk. So there are maybe some ways of making a claim about the basic parts of the product, but they're misleading because it takes a whole bunch of that stuff to work, not some little bit of it. So again, all I suggest is look for independent study.
Mm-hmm. What about these things like grounding mats and earthing mats and stuff like that?
Grounding mats. You put your socks on, you run across your rug, and you touch the door, and you feel a shock. Mm-hmm. That's static. Your body is a capacitor. That means it can absorb and hold charge. And so when you put your foot on a grounding pad, it discharges, it shorts to ground. So there is science behind some aspects of that. To say that I'm on a grounding pad and I'm safe from all emissions is totally inaccurate. Let's say I give you a call and you pick up your phone, you're on a grounding mat, and you start talking to me, and we stay on for an hour. Well, in that hour, that signal has been hitting your brain. It's not been grounded. So is there a benefit of having that grounding pad when you're using a cell phone? The answer is absolutely not. So it really depends. In general, for reducing the charge to ground, it works. And there is benefit in neutralizing that for the body. But it's certainly not necessary. Well, think of it this way. If your Wi-Fi is on the right of you, and you have your computer on the left of you and your grounding pad, and you're using Wi-Fi to communicate, and you're on a grounding pad, where do you think the signals are going? They're not going into the grounding pad. They're going into your head.
Yikes.
So there's certain circumstances where grounding pads are legitimate and they do really bring value, and many swear by it. But there are also many conditions that you got to be aware of that says, if you want to be safe, eliminate the bees in the room.
Right.
And then you're really safe.
I downloaded a program called Flux or Flux, F.Lux.
Yeah, it changes your screen.
Yeah, it's a cross-platform computer program that adjusts the display's color temperature according to location and time of day so that your eyes can rest. And I have it on my phone, and it kind of, on my computer.
No,
and
it's on the phone automatically. You know that, right?
Yeah, I already did it on my phone too.
No, it's automatic. You just go night shift.
Yeah, but you can actually keep it that way, which I do. It goes on at a certain time, or really early. That's why my phone's so yellow. And I just warmed the temperature up on that because it makes me nervous about the whole eyesight thing, because I do spend a lot of time, especially these days, writing and on the computer. And, I feel it. I get exhausted. My eyes get so tired, and nothing helps them. So I've been using that, which I think is helpful.
So what you've just explained to us is, as a cardinal rule, if my software device, my portable device, has the ability to mitigate the blue component of the signal, I should use it. And you absolutely did the right thing. Mm-hmm. You don't need glasses if you have the capacity to adjust that kind of
to buy. You mean the blue blocker glasses?
Because that's what they're doing. They're playing around with the blue component of the signal.
Right. Interesting. Wow. What else? Let's see. What's up with digital clocks? Why are they so bad? And worse than like another type of, maybe not like digital clock, or like a radio that you might have plugged into your bedroom or something?
It's power consumption. They're actually they're taking an AC signal and they're converting it to DC almost all the time. So there's a transformer inside doing that conversion. That, by definition, generates emissions.
Huh.
And by the way, you fix that problem by moving that clock at least 4 foot away, and you don't have a problem.
Yeah,
Never
I always
put it within. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Whenever I'm in a hotel or something, I'll either unplug it or just move it. So then, how about infrared saunas? So far infrared saunas are all the rage, and we've had one for a really long time. And when we moved, we haven't put it back together, and I'm very much miss it. But so when we purchased ours, which is a clear light sauna, and they claim to have the lowest EMF emissions of all the saunas, and you can actually go to healthygutgirl.com and click on the shop page and scroll down to the clear light sauna banner to check them out. But shameless plug. But how can... In one breath, they say, we have really low EMF emissions. But in the other breath, it's like, infrared is great for you. Get the higher, the better, the hotter, the better. Like, explain that to me.
Yeah, it's all in the AC conversion, the power converted to the stuff that's coming into the room. It's the power source conversion that's actually generating those emissions. And some sauna manufacturers have been aware that that conversion can be more harmful, and with some changes can be less harmful. And so I'm glad to hear that that's the one you got, because some of them are fairly dangerous.
Yeah, we actually got rid of our first one because
yeah, and yeah, so it is not in the stuff that's coming into the room that's helping you with the sauna. It's the byproduct of the power conversion.
I had a friend of mine who was, I guess, an engineer, and he said he wouldn't. He said he would never drive a full-on electric car like a Tesla. He's like, they're great cars. He goes, but the EMFs that coming off that AC converter. He said, says you're probably going to see cases of like huge prostate cancer. Who knows? But he was just he was kind of saying, railing against it a little bit.
Well, he is absolutely correct. I hate to get into this detail, but that's a very interesting sort of issue. They typically are DC motors, and the motor winds at the wheel are where the emissions are being generated most. And so when I was talking about extremely low frequency, most of the stuff I explained was the stuff you plug in a wall. That's alternating current at 60 cycle. So when you hear about extremely low frequency stuff, that is what is known to be most dangerous. Well, it turns out when you go to a digital signal that's DC based, direct current, the cycling wave is not cycling, so it's more a magnetic exposure. Well, it turns out that magnetic exposure, there's not sufficient evidence in research to say that's any less dangerous. So he's right to be careful, because I agree with him that there's no evidence that says that's more safe. And it's clearly been established that that can be dangerous. I wouldn't buy an electric machine.
Unless you just knew more in the future, or
or I put shielding.
Shielding. What kind of? Now, talk to me about the shielding. What shielding are you talking about? What's the material?
Or is that proprietary?
Is that proprietary? Yeah.
Well, actually, no. I'll tell you. Radio frequency stuff is conductive, so it looks for ground. In other words, if you have your cell phone on and there is a grounding pad, it'll be attracted to that to some extent. So a lot of shielding is directive. It sort of directs it to where they want it to go, and it's to ground, right? So a lot of the shielding stuff has a whole bunch of variations of how to impede an RF signal and minimize it or eliminate it. So there are a lot of materials that do that. I mentioned carbon before, aluminum, and then there are obviously much more exotic stuff, which are alloys that are used in the industry. So that's that part. Then there's the extremely low frequency stuff that really you have to refract it. You know, when you look at a fish in a pond and you can't see it, or you see it and you think it's one place and someplace else. Well, there are shielding materials that refract the extremely low frequency stuff and renders it harmless as well. So there are a variety of technologies that are available in the marketplace that can help.
So would that be similar to like when you get an X-ray and they have those vests that you have to put over your body to cover whatever's not being X-rayed?
That's right.
Well, I love to tell that story. Why should you be worried? Well, watch human nature. You go to the dentist, they put something close to your face and they put something really heavy on your chest, and then they run into the other room.
What about your brain?
Button. Why are they running?
And what about your brain?
Right. Exactly. They're running because they know it's dangerous. Right. And so that's lead. Believe it or not, lead will not shield RF. or microwaves. It just won't. It passes right through.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So it really depends on the speed of that signal, what is best to shield it.
Why do they even do that then? Why do they even cover you, jerks?
Make you feel like you're safe.
Yeah.
Or they don't know, which just makes them ignorant.
It turns out that those X-rays, the gamma rays, they are filtered by lead. It's the RF, the microwave signal, that passes through lead right away. But X-rays don't. So they're doing the right thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess after this conversation on 5G, it would seem as if you have the chance, go to your local council meetings and just prevent these towers from going up until further studies are available.
No, you can't prevent them.
You can't. It's happening.
Remember, I told you before, they do not have to go to local jurisdiction for approval, and it's really right now there is no effective way of ensuring that those kinds of things are not going to be in your front door.
I guess the only way to do it is you vote with your money. It's like
also,
right. I mean, just don't get the 5G services. Like don't fall into that every time you go into a cell phone store.
I couldn't say no to my 5G. I don't know anything, first of all, so it was a lot of 5G, ignorance.
Yeah, most people will not know the difference between a cable service and a modem that's talking to a cell tower using 5G. They really won't know the difference, but there is a clear difference.
It's basically the chef telling the frog, "Hey, we're just gonna give you a little more heat. You're gonna love it. It's gonna be really, really good for you."
Yeah. Guess what? You're getting a discount on this new thing.
You're getting a discount on it. Yes. And before you know it, you're boiled away.
And the frog's like, "Oh, cool.
Oh my, we are. Oh my goodness.
The lifespan of the 5G is going to last your lifetime. I'm not going to tell you how long that is, but
well, with the 5G, not very long, apparently.
Right.
So, what about Mark kind of gave a hopeless moment there of saying there's nothing. Well, both of you, that there's nothing we can do. But I would argue and say that because of the same way that it happened with me talking about it at the dog park, and all of a sudden everybody's turning off their Wi-Fi modems at night, all of the people that I know, and then this podcast is reaching people, and then so on and so forth. At least we could start to mitigate some of the bees in the room by doing those things and telling people, hey, go to DefenderShield.com and get yourself a laptop, barrier, and get yourself a shield, and get yourself, turn off your Wi-Fi at night, move your digital clock away from your head. Don't opt for the 5G network on your laptop unless you're downloading a movie and you got to do it really fast or something like that. Stick on your 2G and, things like that. We can just start to educate from within instead of waiting for them to fix it for us. Because if you also think about it, like are you on your phone right now?
I put the screen on.
He's on the phone. He's looking at his phone while I'm talking.
I put the color on like you did.
Like, she's rambling. But anyway, but I think it's kind of like cars, there's more people killed by cars than by gun violence. But does that mean we're going to get rid of cars? No.
Right.
So we have to just be careful, mitigate the issues that can happen with cars. And you just have to you don't want to get rid of the technology and send us going backwards, but you also want to be able to live with it and not destroy our bodies and our health also.
Yeah. But by the way, that's where I don't want to be a victim, and I offer things that mitigates being a victim.
Right.
You were also chatting about what actions can we take. I'd like to let you know, no one ever listened to me up to 4G, but for some reason, I do not know why, all of a sudden there's been lots and lots of higher and higher profile of this technology. The science communities are rallying around this. They're getting more and more effective. Largely, I believe, it's because we have decided to make some changes in the environment we live in. Mm-hmm. And it's been more and more effective. We haven't gotten where we need to be, but I'm encouraged with what I'm seeing. People are taking actions.
Yeah.
And voting with their pocketbook.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the strongest message is that we can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what else? I want, last time you're so modest and you don't like to appear to be just doing this because you're selling a product, but I really want to just say that what a difference that the DefenderShield, laptop shield makes. Yeah. And
Yeah, you can feel it, right?
yeah,
Because
I can feel
you're
it.
sensitive. We actually have a function in there where we actually absorb the signal. And so even if the littlest stuff exposures bother you, chances are that will help.
Well, I never thought I was sensitive, but I think, like you said, the older I get, and it crossed my mind a little bit ago that, I think men and women have, hormonal imbalance, but I think women definitely have, pulled the short straw on this one. We got the raw end of the deal when it comes to hormones because we're in so much more demand of certain hormones than men are. And that means we require more to make more hormones. And so our input has to be more. Our caloric intake, things like that seem like they need to be more specific to making hormones. And that's not an education that we have. And so with these technologies, it seems like we know, in fact, I think we might have talked about this last time, that these electromagnetic frequencies and microwave and whatnot, they actually can raise cortisol. Like you get people who get, and they're like in these, I really like those ghost shows, and like Ghost Adventures and stuff like that. And they always talk about, they call it a fear cage. Like when you're in the opposite of a Faraday cage, I suppose, would be when you're in a home that has poor wiring, you have digital devices and all sorts everywhere, and you've got Wi-Fi and you've got all kinds of things going on, and you think you've got a ghost in your house, but really you're just completely pounded by electromagnetic frequency.
Yeah, really.
You think someone's watching you all day.
I feel like someone's on my shoulders.
Yeah, you feel that's because that's how it makes you feel. So when I use my laptop on my lap, which I know you shouldn't do, they shouldn't have called it a laptop.
No, exactly.
I feel my quad bones, my actual femurs, they ache inside.
Oh, yeah.
And this is you just rolled your eyes at me.
No, I'm rolling your eyes at the fact that you're feeling this. I'm not at the experience of it.
I thought you were like calling bullshit on me.
That's actually happened to you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so because I kind of had hesitated on buying anything to protect myself from those, because I thought, it's one thing to hear it and feel like it's real, but it's another thing to experience it. And like you said before, Doctor, you were saying before about it's a constant pounding between the. What did you say? It was between. I wrote it down here. I've got all these notes in front of me. Oh, the 1G is an analog, and it's a constant.
Yeah, it's an analog constant load
to the body, and then the 2 to 4G is this digital, and it's like boom, 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 boom.
Right.
Well, on YouTube, there's this guy who records it and transfers it in a MIDI in one of these like musical digital things he has that hooks up to the computer. So makes it audible somehow. And you can hear it. And Dr. Marshall used to say that, it's constant pounding on our biofield, on our frequency. And he records, not Dr. Marshall, but this guy on YouTube recorded the sound. And it literally is like listening to the worst possible heavy metal you've ever heard. It was so obtrusive, and it was a pounding. It was like a boom, 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 boom.
Well, here, since you mentioned how true is it? There was these videos on YouTube where these people take like 4 cell phones and a popcorn kernel, and they'd ring all the 4 cell phones
and popped
and the kernel popped.
The energy level, magnitude of those signals are unlikely to be able to do that.
Yeah, so it had to be fake. Okay.
They're probably in Atlanta and had it on the asphalt and then put
right
in the middle of summer.
Right.
But you can take your cell phone when it's ringing and put it next to a speaker, and you can hear it. The speaker will pick up the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I want to go back to that kernel issue. It did not break and open up that kernel because there wasn't enough power, but in time, 0.1 watts per kilogram will break a cell.
So it damages the inside of the kernel, but it may not pop it open.
The inside, and that's what you worry about. Is
so it's the stuff you can't see.
You really can't. That's biological impacts, right?
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if we just stayed here, I could come up with 20 more questions, but we've actually reached our hour, which is amazing. But can you think of anything else, Mark, that you wanted to talk about?
No, that was pretty inclusive of all.
Yeah, I mean, I listened to our last one and I'm just like, wow, it's so interesting that even for me, it took time for me to integrate the information into my life. Knowing also with the people that I worked with, they were pretty keen on trying to reduce the bees in the room also. But I would do a little bit of it, but I wouldn't do much. Like, oh, here's a question, Mark, with your magnets. So Mark carries magnets in his pocket.
Right.
And Dr. Marshall used to say, he's concerned about that because they might be able to do something, but you're not in control over of what's going on with those magnets, the size of the magnets, whatever. Do you have anything to say about magnets?
I do. When I talked about electromagnetic radiation, AC or DC, direct or alternating, the direct is more magnetic. And the point I was making before was long-term exposure of a largely magnetic field is as dangerous as electromagnetic field, where there's electrical and...
Whoa. So I have these magnets at home that I'll put on my feet, right? I forget I bought them online somewhere. And so you just make sure the polarity is reversed. And I have rings for my hands too. And I'll wear them for a little, and after a while, I think after about 20 minutes to a half hour, I got to take them off because my metabolism starts to kick up. Like I start getting awake. Right. So you're telling me that I'm baking myself. I am. I'm causing harm.
What I'm saying is that your individual cells around that are responding. You're feeling it in a way that you feel like it's different.
Yes.
But what is the biological long-term impact of that specific cell under that exposures? Now, chances are it's not on, off. So it's less likely to be as problematic as electromagnetic radiation is. But we know through research that it can be damaging.
It can be damaging.
For me, it's simple. Take precautionary measures when you can. It's not complicated. Don't do it.
Get those away from me. He just threw his magnets at me.
I just threw my magnet. I just had them in my pocket. Sometimes I just carry them with me on my left side.
So what about these magnetic tubes that Elon Musk is funding to get people in their cars from point A to point B?
You mean the Hyperloop?
Really, really fast. That's all magnetic technology, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, they are. Actually, it's actually taking electrical energy and converting it as well. So. Yeah, it's different. Not knowing much about it, I would say I would be careful.
I wouldn't want to be running that.
Well, that kind of experiment's been running for a long time in Japan with these maglev railways that have been running. I mean, right? That's out there.
They may actually have enough of metal to conduct those away from those who are in the cabin, in the car itself.
Right, there's enough shielding between the passenger and the rest.
Shielding it, and that makes sense.
And I bet the Japanese are smart enough to create a shielding for the patrons.
And I'm pretty sure it's steel, and that's a natural barrier.
I'm sure my Prius has.
It does not.
Have a barrier, right? No. A protective shield?
Yeah, the barrier is your scrotum.
Oh, man. I don't know whether to love you or despise you right now, Daniel, for all this information.
It's good stuff, though. Okay, so before we go, I want to ask you about since I brought it up a minute ago. It's silly, but I just have to ask. So in regards to spirits or like people that have passed, I bet no one's ever asked you this, and I probably know the answer because you're such an engineer. But on these ghost shows, they have these electromagnetic frequencies or these detectors, and they kind of what do you call? They balance them out so that they're not detecting they get a baseline, so they're not detecting any frequencies in the room that are already there, and then they also shut off whatever, and then they they find these frequencies, and at the same time other things happen, like maybe they have these like eerie feelings, or they hear a sound, or they get like a voice on the recorder. Right. So is that even remotely possible from your perspective? Like energies that we don't see, I'm not saying they're dead people, but energies that we just are unknown, or we don't, that are paranormal? Well,
it turns out those are microwave RF signals that they're using to measure. So the power levels are known. Whether the source of it is an entity that's creating that energy is, as an engineer, you sort of want to scientifically prove that.
Oh, right.
But my son believes it's true, and he's been on those things, so I don't know.
I think it's cool because I whether I want to believe or I do believe, or a little bit of both, I just seen a few of, most of them are pretty silly, but I've seen a few of those episodes where they're genuinely trying to be, as scientific as they can while you're hunting a ghost. And I don't know, I feel like some of it is pretty compelling,
I think so too, by the way. you know, like you watch this thing and wait a minute, how could that be? And so I agree with you.
Yeah.
Whether it's true or not,
we don't know yet to be seen.
Right.
And I want to go back.
You cut me off like that. I had another question.
I want to go back to one.
Stop, guys.
I love it. I have one more. I have to go back to this magnet thing for a moment, because so many companies are now selling magnetic, wrapping tape for your knees and whatnot, and magnetic support. So are those useless? I mean, does that not help the body heal in short term? Or
actually, you're crossing a line when you ask me that question. Mm-hmm. Is there medical benefit to electromagnetic or magnetic exposure? Evidence is pretty clear that there is. And so if it's a controlled environment, like, for example, Jeanette, biochemist, she has used equipment in medical spaces that are in the 100 hertz and below space. And they'll expose for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 15 minutes. And the benefit outweighs the risk in those kinds of work. So I actually believe that to be true.
Well, there's sun is good to some degree, sunlight,
of course.
Infrared light.
Exactly.
Yeah, so, and there's we interviewed this guy last podcast from this company called OsteoStrong, and at their you go in and you use these machines that help stimulate bone density in the body and bone growth. And he has this machine, when you're done using all of those other machines, you sit down on one of these like grounding mats or earthing mats on a chair. But then they put this thing around your head, and it's like these lights, these pulsing lights. And I think they have it at Bulletproof also. And it really makes you feel good. So there's something about the lights and the sound and the frequencies that they're emitting at you that are doing something beneficial, because it feels really good. And obviously they wouldn't use it if it didn't, I don't think.
Yeah, so, I agree with that. Under the right circumstances, this stuff's good for you.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, thanks again for coming back. I'm so pleased that you were available to be here, and you answered all our questions. And I don't know what we're going to do next except for get rid of those bees.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I enjoy working with you specifically because you're engaging for your listening audience, and that's important.
Thank you. Yeah. Try to translate it for everybody who might be confused a little bit.
Yeah. You never hear me talk about the inverse power levels that are occurring. You got to keep it a way of sharing information that's helpful and memorable for.
Right. You can't be a Debbie Downer, because then we won't have you back.
Yes. Thank you so much, Daniel.
Thanks, Dan. All right. Okay. We'll talk to you soon. I'll let you know when we're launching. You too.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye. You really have to get out of the habit of interrupting me.
When did I interrupt you?
You interrupted me right in the middle of my ghost talk, and you started talking about those damn magnets.
Oh, the ghost
You're
talk.
just pissed off because
I'm
you
not
spent so much
pissed
money
off.
on those damn magnets.
No, they were so cheap anyway. Just
You're
I
like
realized
waking
that
up in the middle of the night. They're killing
I
you.
didn't know. I didn't know I was microwaving.
You said the F word.
Did I? No, this is explicit.
Are we recording?
Yeah, we're recording.
Okay.
So I didn't know I was microwaving myself. Freak.
You're frying yourself. See, this is what Dr. Marshall used to say. He used to say, don't just go buying any kind of little, tchotchke to try that people are trying to sell you. But I do have to also say that they sell some tchotchkes, or they used to.
Yeah, well, look, he did say that these, in small doses, there are benefits, like in the medical community, these, EMFs or magnetics are used for healing. So
yeah, but that doesn't help us, does it?
no, but I'm not.
I mean, it might help people.
Exactly. I don't know the power level of the magnets, how strong they are.
Right? I've wanted to ask him about FiOS. Isn't FiOS underground? Shit, let's call him back.
Well, you cursed. Well, I think he would say that the answer would be the same. It's a current running underground, and it's giving off EMFs.
Yeah, but it's underground, so maybe it's not as bad as
shielded.
like 5G and all that.
Yeah, but it transmits. These lines go to a transmitter that transmits
it has
the signal.
to ultimately be in our space.
Sprayed out like a hose of microwaves on the city.
Oh yeah.
Yikes.
That's really
doesn't
crazy.
it's eye-opening to get this information, because now when I'm driving by a cell phone tower, I'm not thinking, great, I can call anyone in the world or my family while I'm driving. I'm going, how much EMFs is that giving off?
Right.
What about the surrounding area? How close is that to a house?
Or to babies, or to school, or daycare, or my brain. Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, the scary part that I was referring to with the whole Kate Spade thing was just that if these things are hijacking our endocrine system to some degree, like they are, well, I'm not saying if, they are. There's already science. There's already research showing that these frequencies are affecting our microbiome. They're affecting our endocrine system. And so that's contributing to certain types of behaviors. I'm not saying Kate Spade killed herself because this tower was on her roof, but I am saying that it's a very good chance that it wasn't helping at all, and especially if you already have challenges in the areas of emotional health, and you're on medications, and you're having hormone imbalance and all this, and then you're depressed, and then something goes wrong in your life, and you're taking meds, and then...
We've talked about the toxic burden of living and just everything. In time, all of this stuff's going. It's like a weight of bricks on top of you. You just keep adding and adding and adding, and before you can't stand up any longer and collapse.
Oh, it's so sad. But, what are you going to do? Get rid of cars, get rid of, your cell phone. I mean, everything we're doing right now is because of, Wi-Fi and these
I think this is why we started this show. I think that we have always talked about that we have to sort of get all this information out there to empower all our listeners, even ourselves, to not be victims and do what we can to, the onslaught of just technology and progress. We like it. I like a cell phone. You love a cell phone. And okay, but we have to know there's cost to all this. So what can we do in the meantime? Turn it off at night. Don't sleep with it. Turn your Wi-Fi off. I mean,
sleep hygiene. That's the word. That's the word being
I don't have
tossed
any.
around.
I don't have anything in my room. No clock.
We don't
no
either
TV.
now. We don't even turn the light on now. We just go in there and just like that's it. It's like a womb.
If I could go get like a little mud cave, I'd sleep in that in the yard.
Yeah, and then come out and have a Tesla.
And then just have and then sit in the Tesla, get my cell phone out, and Bluetooth headphones.
Also, I'm looking at this new iMac that we bought because our last one crashed, and these don't have batteries or cords.
They're Bluetooth.
They're all Bluetooth.
They're all
so
Bluetooth.
The mouse is Bluetooth.
It's
The
all
keyboard's Bluetooth. The ear pods are Bluetooth.
Yes.
My JBL speaker in the house is Bluetooth.
You didn't bring that up to
all
Daniel?
of your remote controls are Bluetooth. That's just the stuff that is wireless. We're not even talking about the things that plug into the wall, which also he said emit. And
is that why they call it Bluetooth? Because they're using blue energy?
No, Bluetooth is the people who created it it's a Norse sign of some king in Norse mythology or something. Norse mythology.
Right.
Anyway, and the Bluetooth, it's a whole like thing. Anyway, very uninteresting, but I thought it was something significant.
But he was also saying that you want to mitigate the blue frequency.
Right, I went off there. Yeah, you want to change the screen on your light. So the light on your screen. So I need to download Flux.
Yeah, so Flux.
F.lux. F.lux.
F.lux.
F.lux. And upload that into your computer, and then it kind of helps you you can set a timer so that your screen goes yellow. And at first you'll get really offended by it and be like, ew, it's so ugly. But then your eyes get used to it.
But if you're using it at night, you should be using it. Because I remember I would do the same working on my computer. I'm going back. This is keeping me awake. And I want to start gearing down for sleep.
Yeah. We have become so sensitive to it now that we've had over a month of no Wi-Fi at night and stuff, nothing really plugged in except our fridge. And that's it really. And, we were in New Mexico for the fermentation festival, and we were sleeping at my mom's, and, it was really hot, and we had the hallway door open, and both of us woke up and couldn't sleep because the air conditioning unit had a blinking light on it. Oh. And it was like that little light was keeping us awake. That's how more sensitive you become once you start to eliminate all of that stuff, I think.
All right, this is going to be, so July is Wi-Fi blackout month.
Yeah, everybody.
We should make it that.
So just try it. I think it's more of a problem if you have Fios, because something with the modem, I forget. But if you have, regular like Spectrum or Time Warner or all those others.
And it's easy to do. Even if you don't have a switch on back, all you got to do is get a timer for your outlet that you plug it in, and you can the outlet will turn off.
The problem with that is that sometimes some modems, if they don't have a switch or routers, is it the router or the modem that we're turning off? Great.
Yeah.
It's the one that is...
have the antennas on it. That's your...
Mine doesn't have a...
Oh, that's right. They don't have antennas on them.
It's the one with all multiple blinking lights. You have to wait for all the lights to turn green in order for you
I believe that's the router.
to use it. It's the one on top, too.
Yes.
Anyway, that guy usually has a switch on it, or you can just unplug the power cord to it. And try it. If you have some sleep problems, keep us posted. Let me know. Send us an email and let us know if it's changed at all. It might take you a week to do it, but some people notice it. Everyone that I've done it with, they're like, it happened that night that they did it. They were able to sleep better. They said, my friend Steven said, even when I have a bad night of sleep, it's not nearly as bad as it used to be before the Wi-Fi issue. So there's that. And that was awesome. He's so great. He's so knowledgeable. He's very cool. And he does have his DefenderShield.com, where he does have products that help shield your laptop from your lap, and other products, cell phone shields and things like that. Maybe we can get a coupon code. Check back on, maybe by the time this is launched, I'll have it in the show notes. Last time he gave us a coupon code, we got 10% off. Awesome. So what else? That's it, friends. Thanks again, and shut that Wi-Fi off.